couple weeks ago, I had the chance to help film a comparison video for 4 different bell brass snares. And I don't know what it is about the past couple years, but I had never even seen a Tama bell brass before. And then in the past couple years, I've been able to check out like 3 or 4 of them, as well as a lot of these different reproductions and sort of bell brass inspired drums coming out of a fair number of different boutique companies that seem to really be having a moment right now. And that's exactly what was going on in this comparison. I was being asked by Will Andrews, who's the manager of West Coast Drum Shop in Bellevue here. He was asking me to help film a comparison with a Tama bell brass, an original from '81. If you're not familiar with the pedigree of those snares, I've made a couple videos about them already. Feel free to go check those out. But that snare, as well as a reproduction model made with a Güven shell that was a bronze alloy that was specifically designed to exactly match the original Tama bell brass, a Duluth shell, also a 3mm bronze shell, but with cast bronze hoops, so something a little bit different. And then the last one was a Savage custom drum, also meant to sort of be a bell brass recreation with a 3mm bronze shell. So what I've got for you is a fairly lengthy comparison and then also a blind test that I do to see if I can tell the differences between the snares once they've all been recorded and randomized. So I think what I'll do is I'll put the blind test at the end. So if you want to go into the blind test completely blind and do it with me, you can just skip ahead to the blind test and then go back to the comparison. Or if you want to approach the blind test like I did, where I heard the drums first and then I did the blind test, go ahead and watch the comparison video now. You'll notice that it's not me doing this comparison. This video was for Will Andrews. And let me tell you, you are going to come for the comparison, but you are going to stay for Will's playing because he is an absolute monster drummer. So without further ado, let's hear these 4 bell brass snares. All right, so here we are at the computer for our blind test. What I've done is I've taken the 4 drums, I've bounced samples of just one of the tunings, and I have them on these tracks that are named random letters, and then I have an answer key that will tell me what letter corresponds to which drum. So I'm excited for you to do this with me, and depending on if you jumped to here first or if you listened to all of the audio as well, maybe you've already heard the drums as well. So let's see what we can figure out here. I've got my comments open here so I can kind of be writing down my thoughts as we're listening. Let me put the headphones on and let's just start listening to these one by one. So the first one I have here, and I've shuffled these up, the first one is T, which again, the letters don't correspond with anything. They're just random. T sounds like this. O. J. And X. Ooh, okay. So first impressions, hold on, let me listen a little more real quick. I'm gonna kind of start at these medium hits. Oh man. I went in with some level of confidence, but you know how blind tests go. Things get murky. So tonally, they're all like in the ballpark. They're all in the same family, but there are some distinct differences here. I know I remember feeling like the OG Tama was just like maybe more controlled sounding than the others. There's this low end thing that Will and I keep discussing as being a part of that sound. And so I'm kind of I'm trying to figure out which one I think is the bell brass first. Sorry, they're all bell brass, the Tama. I think it's either J or X. For me, J and X both sound a little more controlled. And I remember Güven shell sounding pretty similar, but just having a little more overtone, a little more going on. Oh my God, that's tough. Oh, I'm so screwed. I'm gonna say J, I think maybe is the Tama. Okay, which would lead me to believe I think X maybe is the Güven shell. All right. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I feel like J is maybe the most controlled and has the most low end or kind of low mids. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna say I think J is the Tama, X is the Güven. O and T, I feel like I remember Will's drum, the Savage, being the brightest. So kind of the most open. I'm going to say I think it's T. I think this is the Savage. I'm going to say I think this is Will's drum. Great sounding drum, but I remember in the room feeling like it was the most different sounding.
So that would, by process of elimination, that would lead O to be the cast hoops Duluth shell. Let me just listen through here and see if I'm ready to lock that answer in. Now, you hopefully are writing down your own answers as well. Hopefully you're following along with me. Okay, I'm gonna lock this in except for O and X. I just want to listen back and forth and see if I think I might want to switch these two. I am actually going to switch those. I'm going to say I think O is the Güven shell and X is the cast hoops. I really liked the sound of the cast hoop snare in the room, and I'm just liking the sound of X a little bit more than O right now. So I'm just kind of going based on that. All right, I'm locking in my answers. Hopefully you've got your answers locked in. So now I am going to reveal via the answer key what the real answers were. All right, I've got the answer key pulled up. Let's see how poorly I did. The Savage was O, got that wrong. The real Tama was J, I got that right. Okay, the Güven shell was T, I got that wrong, and the cast hoops was X, I got that right. So I just mixed up the Güven shell and Will's drum, which is interesting. Not what I would have expected. I thought in the room those felt fairly different. Now, I had Will do this blind test as well. He also got the real bell brass, or the Tama. He got that correct as well. It really goes to show you how difficult it can be to parse out the differences here in a blind test, even when you have a fair amount of experience with the subject matter. There's like a density of sound in the original Tama that I was listening for, and I felt like I heard, and I think that's how I got it right. I think also that's how Will got it right as well. So that definitely has a thing, whether it's better or worse than anything else. But really one of the surprise highlights for me was the cast hoop drum. I'm usually not a huge fan of like die cast hoops and really thick, stiff hoops, but man, those hoops on that Duluth shell, that thing sounds great. So that's the blind test. I would go back and watch the comparison footage now if you haven't yet, and I would even go back and review it even if you did before watching the blind test here. So that's how well I did. I'm gonna now pass it back over to me in the practice room to wrap up.
All right, so that's the comparison and the blind test, and I would love to know in the comments how you did in the blind test, but also just what did you think about these drums? Were they fairly different? Were they fairly similar? Do these so-called bell brass, or these thick bronze shell drums, do these really have a particular thing? Many of you know that the OG Tama bell brasses are going for crazy money these days, and it makes sense that sort of this boutique niche little market for similar shelled drums has cropped up, and these drums also go for not insignificant amounts of money. So is it worth it? Do they have a thing? Personally, I have to admit that it seems like I could tell what the original bell brass was, and that was the one that Will could pick out as well. Now, just because that drum has a distinctive sound doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best sound for every particular scenario, but it definitely does have a thing. Now, whether that thing is worth the thousands and thousands of dollars that people are paying for them now, maybe. There's obviously a collectability and a rarity aspect of it, as well as a practical aspect of it. And people pay a lot more money for things that are completely non-functional at all. So it's not that crazy to spend, that amount of money for snares like these. In any case, I would love to know, cost aside, if you could only have one of those drums, which one would you be picking? Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.